Hello everyone, this is Ange. So today, I want to do a spoiler-free video review for the recently released visual novel Musicus, developed by Overdrive and officially localized into English by MangaGamer. Overdrive has developed several visual novels I have read and enjoyed in the past, such as Edelweiss, Kira Kira, Deardrops, and Bokuten. Musicus' main story writer, Renya Setoguchi, wrote visual novels like Kira Kira and Swan, so you might see some similarities of how routes play out if you read those visual novels. Musicus has a realistic, down-to-earth setting with character designs that aren't as anime-like as other modern visual novels. Even the main heroine, Mikazuki Hanai, with her white hair and pale skin, has her design justified with characters constantly referring to her as an albino. As you may tell from the title, Musicus is all about music, but more specifically, the rock and roll genre. Musicus is actually an insightful look in the struggles anyone in the rock and roll music scene has to go through. This includes local rock scenes, doing tours, doing professional work, and even just playing casual solo music on the streets. Even if you're not a big music fan, the way the story plays out helps get you engaged with the help of our protagonist, Kei Tsushima. Kei actually starts off not working on music. In fact, he starts off by going to a unique part-time nighttime class while studying to become a doctor. He's a very serious and hard-working person, to the point some people call him out for being kind of robotic. Through a set of convenient lucky breaks, Kei is able to get a taste of rock music, and it quickly becomes a big influence on his life. And thanks to his hard-working personality, he's able to quickly catch up in skill to his influences. Saying any more would spoil too much of the story, but once Kei gets involved in music directly, is when the visual novel picks up and really hits its stride. Musicus has 4 main routes, and one thing I personally like about them is that they're a lot more than just heroine routes. The storytelling actually has quite a lot of time skips, sometimes days, sometimes months, sometimes even several years, and these help lead into differentiating the 4 routes a lot, besides which girl you end up with. The main choices that lead into these routes are very far away from each other, and are really big influences in how Kei's life moves forward with music in both the present and the distant future. The first route I'll talk about is for Yako Ogami. She's a very friendly and kind girl who Kei met around middle school, and is currently one of his classmates at the school he currently goes to. Her route is the most school-focused, and also the most wholesome in my opinion. The next route I'll talk about is for Meguru Kosaka, a very competent bassist. She's a very relaxed and carefree person, whose main joy is being able to play as many live shows as possible. Her route is all about focusing on enjoying music as music, and how her past influenced her to play bass as much as she does in the present. The next route is actually kind of a big spoiler. The most I'll say is that the branch to this route is very late in the common route, and if you're familiar with Renya Setoguchi's writing style, certain big events will seem familiar to his previous works. Either way, this route will definitely leave a big impact. The final route is basically the true route for the game's main heroine, Mikazuki Hanai. Mika is the sister of Korekyo Hanai, a guy who becomes one of Kei's biggest musical influences. Mika herself is definitely a bit of a weirdo. She is very emotional, blunt, lacks self-confidence, and kind of a shut-in, but soon gets trained to be a good vocalist due to her brother's influence. Her route is definitely the longest and has quite a lot happening in it, with many ups and downs for different characters, but you'll almost never be bored. The general tone of the visual novel is kind of hard to pinpoint. It's definitely not a pure lighthearted story, but it's also not a completely dark, serious story either. The tone of the story kind of shifts based on where the protagonist is in his life. There will be lighthearted, fun, and humorous moments. There will be somber, sad moments. There will be high-energy rock moments. There will be melancholic, dark moments. The way the visual novel is paced almost feels close to how life will throw things at you randomly. These situations will vary heavily based on where you are in the common route, which route you pick, and which part of the route you're currently on. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is that this game has a lot of side characters. I mentioned earlier that there are a bunch of time skips in this visual novel, and within each part, you'll see a bunch of side characters you may see several times at most, then never see again. Nevertheless, the characters with sprites do make enough of an impact that they're not throwaway, and some have kind of interesting character development. To go into some of the more technical aspects of the visual novel, as you may notice, the text box actually covers the whole screen. This is known as the NVL style, which was much more common in story-based visual novels released back in the 2000s. Most modern visual novels had the ADV style with just a text box at the bottom of the screen, so I have to admit going back to NVL style was a little weird at first. But once I got used to it, I could see why they chose this format. This visual novel has quite a decent amount of monologuing and narration. K himself describes a lot of what's happening related to musical events and does a bunch of self-reflection on how he's viewing music at his current point of life. There's also a bunch of characters who have voice-acted lines that will take up the whole screen, basically going on a mini rant. Sometimes I thought the NVL narration and monologuing went on a little too long sometimes, but generally, it worked to help get me in the story more. The config menu is pretty bare bones, just enough to edit text speed, general volume, character volume, and not much else. The background music is pretty nice, a lot of different guitar-inspired songs, but with a good amount of variety to fit the tone of the scene that's currently being shown. Just about every character is voice acted, even ones without sprites, with the only exception being the protagonist, which is what we come to expect from Eroge, sadly. The one thing that's kinda interesting is that this visual novel will occasionally use background sound effects as the background music. So expect some scenes where the background music is just hearing cicadas, hearing people walk or honk a car, or talking in a restaurant. The only other major flaws I personally have with this visual novel is that I think a few plot twists are not executed as well as I'd like, and a few of the endings are a little too open-ended or not explained well enough. Also, if you're interested in how the H scenes were executed, there are only 5 of them total. Each of them are thrown in at the way end or the middle of each route, and are all very short. I suppose they kinda have plot value though? Overall, Musicus is definitely a solid visual novel with a story that's very different than a lot of its competition, but still quite engaging. While I don't think it's quite as good as the high ratings on places like VNDB or AeroGamescape show, I still think it's worth a recommendation for someone who's looking for a slice of life series that focuses more on character development and drama. It'll definitely help if you're already interested in the music scene, but I think this story does a good job getting you engaged even if you aren't. My personal rating is an 8 out of 10. What's your opinion on Musicus? Have you read it already? Has this review impacted your decision to consider reading it or not? Feel free to leave feedback on any of these questions or anything in this video in the comments below. If you do show interest in reading it, feel free to join the Overdrive Discord I help admin. It's a chill place to talk about your thoughts as you read the visual novel, and we have strict spoiler rules in there so you won't get spoiled. Anyway, that is all. See you all in the next video.